everybody, and welcome back to the Growth and Gratitude podcast. I'm very, very honored to have a special guest with us today, my friend, Dr. Akash Bajaj, who's going to teach us a lot about anti-aging. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thrilled. So I always start with gratitude, and I would love to know, Dr. Bajaj, what are 3 things you're grateful for in this moment?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say number one would be my physical and my mental health collectively. Having those optimized for myself allow me to really be the best version of myself for the people around me. I would say number two would be my family. I have 2 young kids and a wife, and I would say I'm very grateful for all of the experiences I get to have with the 3 of them, positive and challenging. And I would say number 3 would be all of the unexpected challenges that I've experienced in my life and will continue to experience because
Mhm.
they really are all opportunities for growth if you approach them the right way.
I love that mindset. And as I get older, I'm learning to embrace that more and more because we
Yeah,
just never know what life is going to throw at us.
it's
And we
true.
can't always control that, but we can manage how we respond and how we cope and the choices we make in our lives. So I love that. Thank you. And your family is so beautiful and sweet. And I'm so happy for you. And
Thank
I,
you.
as I was sharing with you earlier, I miss those days. They go really fast. And I know that
Sure.
that's why one of the reasons, which we'll talk about when we get to it, you're so motivated to help people stay young and healthy and be there for their families for as long as possible.
Yeah, for me personally, I'm in my late 40s and I'm an older dad. So when my 2 young kids, I have 2 children under 5 years old. Really, when my son was born, Devin, who's now 4.5 years old, I wasn't in the best of health, and I really didn't take
Mm.
my health seriously at all. And when he was born, it really was kind of a wake-up call to me. Listen, if you expect to be around and be able to play with your son and interact with your son and really be present and alert and active with him mentally as well as physically, you got to make a major change in your life. That's exactly what I did. I really dissected my lifestyle. I dissected my mindset and I dissected why I am where I am in my life, how I've been able to achieve a relatively high level of success in certain areas professionally, but really failing miserably in other areas like my personal health. Once I really broke all that down, I kind of started to develop systems that worked for me. And then I really took those systems and kind of, for lack of a better term, I kind of built out almost a program that I now offer to my clients.
Excellent. Well, we want to hear all about that, but first I probably should introduce you to the audience. And I'm so glad though you started with personally sharing that you've struggled with your own health. I still am always surprised. I shouldn't be when medical doctors say that they neglected their own health, but it shouldn't be surprising because there are so many demands on you. And we all
Right.
know the experience of not always practicing what we're preaching, right?
It's true.
So we're all human. And I do want to though let our audience know a little bit more about you because your achievements and your accomplishments are so impressive and incredible. And there's
Thank
so
you.
much credibility behind what you're going to be sharing with us today. So everybody, please know that Dr. Bajaj is triple board certified in anti-aging, pain management, and anesthesia. He's a medical doctor and also has his master's in public health. He's the medical director of Anthos, a cryotherapy-based athletic recovery cream, which sounds really interesting. His lectures have been heard nationally on CBS Radio, UCLA, UCSF. He completed his undergrad at UCSD. He graduated summa cum laude. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Served his residency at UCLA Medical Center. So there's a lot more, but hopefully I touched on some of the key accomplishments and achievements in your professional career. What did I leave out, Dr. Bajaj?
No, I think you kind of got the main ones. I've also done a pain management fellowship at UC San Francisco, which at the time was considered to be one of the top programs in the country, still is actually. And then, of course, my board certifications in anti-aging and regenerative medicine as well. So yeah, I think you kind of got it all.
Well, thank you for adding those. I would not want those to be left out. It's all incredibly important. And I look forward to learning a lot from you today. I know that's
Thank
gonna
you.
happens. So I just also want to share with people how we know each other, because I'm so honored to know you and to have worked with you and have
Oh,
a
thank you.
few different connections. Yeah. And so we met through the Entrepreneurs Organization, which we've both been involved in. And I've mentioned on other podcasts, which I always highly recommend entrepreneurs check out for support and mentoring and lots of wonderful learning and growth opportunities. So it's a great fit for the work that I do. And also, Dr. Bajaj is a client because he is such a great boss and loves to provide professional development for his staff so that they can grow in their communication and leadership skills. He's hired us to do communication and leadership training and coaching. And I'm so grateful for that. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
Oh, and everybody go and follow Dr. Bajaj on social media, because that's one of the reasons that we're here right now. Because even though I've known all these wonderful things about him, I've been really following his videos a lot on Instagram in particular. And you just have this really masterful way of giving us these little snapshots of amazing tips about how to be healthy, how to be well, everything from mindset to supplements to exercise to everything about how to live with the best quality of life we possibly can and be in the best health we possibly can and practice these anti-aging tips, and you're on top of it all. So everybody, you must find him and follow him, and we'll make sure to put those links in the show notes. But my big question for you is, what are your top tips for us for anti-aging and living a healthy life with the best quality of life that we can and being around for our kids as long as we possibly can?
Yeah. I mean, listen, that's what it's all about ultimately. It's ultimately what we're all kind of chasing. I think that this all starts really very early on, because once you begin to experience any sort of symptomatic issues, any symptoms of anything, frankly, it's almost to the point where it's not too late, but it's almost to the point where you need to be so aggressive to get things back to baseline. And unfortunately, as a medical doctor, I can speak upon this. The way we're trained in medical school sometimes is, listen, wait until the symptoms show up and then treat them reactively. But truthfully, that's not healthcare. That's more like sick care, right? We're waiting for people to get sick and then we're treating reactively. That is not a recipe for success. What is a recipe for success and longevity, and maybe not anti-aging as much, but mostly like pro-aging, right? Aging well and aging with a high quality of life, is really being as proactive and not reactive as possible. How does this begin? Number one, start as early as you possibly can with your habits. Understand what your habits are, why you do the things that you do. That's probably the biggest question, and what you should be doing or could be doing differently to obtain the results you think you want. That's number one. You could easily spend a month just dissecting that and understanding those components. But if you don't really understand why you do what you do, listen, any fad diet that comes across your desk, any new magic weight loss medication, whatever the case may be, will never work, because you don't understand why you need to do what you need to do. So getting very clear on your why is the most important step, first step. For me to understand my why, this is how this all began. This is how I personally began to understand this. Because when my kids were born and I was kind of overweight, I was unhealthy, I was really having a lot of bad habits. I was always wondering why I wasn't sleeping well, why I was like hungry all the time, why I was just cranky all the time, why I was having really poor workouts, why I was irritable and reactive with people. And ultimately, when my son was born, I realized I need to make these changes, not for myself, because it's no longer just about me, but my why. And most parents can speak to this, becomes their kids. Just being an older dad, I mean, I realized that I needed to optimize myself to the best of my ability to stick around for my kids. But optimization doesn't necessarily mean just physically, it also means mentally. So when you're understanding your why do you really need to do these things? Think less about the vanity aspect of it. Like, oh, I just want a six pack so I can walk along the beach and feel awesome. That's all great, but the results typically come from the process. And one thing that I've seen great success with my clients is working on mindset and working on their habits. And once those two things are really optimized, the results kind of come as a secondary gain, a secondary add-on. So really focusing on the habits, the process, and getting you the results that you need. So that would be number two, is understanding your habits and understanding what those habits are, understanding why you need to improve those habits to get you to where you need to be. Now, for example, what does that mean? That could mean something really small, like going to bed between 9 to 10 p.m. every single night, which will allow you to wake up at 5 or 6 a.m. every single morning so you can get that workout in before your day begins. This is a personal example, and that's exactly what I did. I used to think it's no big deal to stay up till 11, midnight, whatever. I'll squeeze a workout in at some point. We all know squeezing a workout in never happens. The next thing you know, you've lost all momentum and you're just down the slippery slope and you're up 10 pounds and you're pre-diabetic. Understanding that you need to build the habits and follow through with that, eventually build momentum along those positive habits, and then the results will kind of fall secondarily to that. So number two would be your habits. Number three, once you understand your why and once you get your habits in line, number three is being consistent. Super basic, super simple, super easy, but for some reason it's very challenging for a lot of us, myself included, to be consistent with almost anything. There's so many distractions in the world we live in today. We can pick up our phone here and this can keep us occupied for hours and hours, accomplishing literally nothing. So staying consistent, keeping your plan very, very simple, but staying as consistent as you possibly can. You'll be shocked at how quickly you can achieve amazing results by doing just those three things.
Okay, so let me jump in and summarize and see if I have any questions. So first, you have to know your why, and it has to be more than just vanity. I could not agree
Right.
more.
Totally.
As we get older, as someone who's quite a bit older than you, this becomes more and more important. You realize that it's about living, it's about having quality of life, it's about being able to move. My yoga teacher always jokes that we're going to yoga and we're doing all these strength building postures because she wants us to be able to not have to wear a diaper. And to be able to get up out of any chair when we're 100 years old. These are the things that I'm starting to think about as I move into that stage of life. So we have to have that motivation, have our why, and have it be really meaningful. If I'm blessed enough to have grandchildren, I want to be running around with them and taking them to amusement parks and at their weddings and all of that. So the habits and the consistency, I couldn't agree more. I'm obsessed with anti-aging and living a high quality of life and staying super healthy. I've built habits. They're really boring. They're really simple. They're really consistent. Just as you said, I get up every morning. I have my morning routine. I meditate. I do my things that I do. And other people might look at that and say, well, how boring you do. And I go to bed between 9 and 10. I do all the things that you're suggesting.
Right.
And it works. And I just have to tell everybody it works. What we're talking about here, when I'm working with coaching clients to build these kinds of habits, I always ask them, do you brush your teeth every morning? And they look at me like I'm crazy. Of course I do. Well, that's how these other habits need to become. And I eat pretty much a lot of the same things. It's a very small diet of the things that work for me. So I couldn't agree more. I'm just reinforcing, wanting to summarize and really let people know that as simple as it sounds, this is really what it takes to live a long, healthy life.
Yeah, it's very true, right? Ultimately, I think simple is really the key word. For some reason, people think, okay, anti-aging, longevity, it's got to be this super complicated algorithm with all these things peppered into it. It's not the case at all. It's the total opposite. We've been conditioned to believe in our society that you need to add things into your life to become optimal. But the truth is, it couldn't be farther from the truth. The truth is, you need to subtract things to become more optimal in your life. The more you can subtract from your life, and I'll tell you what I mean in a minute, the more you're going to achieve the goals that you desire. What do I mean? The more I can subtract overusing my phone with nonsense, just taking me off to some random path that I've wasted my day on. The more I can discipline myself and subtract that, the more likely I am to stay focused on my mission. The more I can subtract staying out past 10 p.m., for example, I won't go out. I won't be physically outside of my home past midnight anymore at all for any reason. Why? I'm subtracting that element out of my life because nothing good happens after midnight. How do I know? Because I've done it. I've been down that road. I've seen the end of every single chapter of that movie. Every single end of that I've seen, and I realized no upside to it. So if you subtract that, you're actually able to stay more focused. What else can you subtract? Junk food. Just don't have it in the house. You're not tempted. So when you have that craving, you got no choice but to eat a healthy rice cake or something like that, or wherever the case may be. Subtract things from your life, and you will become much more focused. It would become much more consistent because you have to be, and you will achieve your results in a much more accelerated fashion.
I could not agree more. And I think, well, I'm curious what you think about this as a doctor. As I've gotten older, I've learned that I have to subtract more, that things
Totally.
affect me. I agree with
Mhm.
you on the subtraction. I've completely removed any kind of junk food, almost all processed food, all kinds of things I've subtracted, and with amazing results. Other things I've reduced significantly, for example, alcohol. So I
Right.
used to drink a lot more alcohol. And when I was younger, I could get away. Oh, well, I thought I was getting away with it. I probably would have been a
Right.
lot better off without it, but I've certainly had to reduce it dramatically and learn to have other ways of having fun and calming and relaxation and things like that. Subtracting a lot of foods. Yeah, a lot of foods that I used to be able to still stay a healthy weight and eat, and just had to subtract them or reduce them dramatically for only like really special occasions. So do you think that that becomes more the case as we age?
I think there's no question about it, and very much like what you just said, Bridget, I totally agree with you, which is alcohol is a great example. It's the one drug our society questions if you don't participate and you don't use it. If you don't drink, people look at you kind of funny,
Hmm.
but it's a drug. I mean, nobody really stops to kind of process it. It is a drug, guys. Like,
Hmm.
it's definitely a drug. It has known mental cognitive effects. There's known brain atrophy in alcoholics. There's liver disease. It is addictive. I mean, it is straight up addictive. If you're an alcoholic and you try to stop alcohol abruptly, it can be life threatening.
Hmm.
It absolutely fits the definition of a drug, but it's a great example. When you We become so accustomed to going out and having a couple drinks here and there because everybody else is doing it. Everybody else is also functioning at 50% all the time. So think
Mm.
about the strategic advantage you can have if you choose to be the person to subtract alcohol from your life. Not
Hmm.
only will you be able to rise above that 50% of the population or your competitors or whatever the case may be, but your thinking is going to be quicker. You're going to be
Yeah.
healthier. How does this all translate into your life? Better workouts, better libido, better relationships with your kids, with your spouse, whatever the case may be, higher levels of energy, better mood, better mindset. And you're just going to accelerate yourself and become truly unbreakable. If you have like a high-end Ferrari or super cool car, and you put great gas in it all the time, once a week, every Friday night, you just dump in the worst gas possible, you're always going to impede your growth. You'll never be able to optimize the engine of that Ferrari.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
are that Ferrari. Your engine is not optimized. Not
Hmm.
you, but in general, one's engine is
Yeah.
not optimized because
Yeah.
these are all just poisons. These are all toxins. Alcohol is a toxin. That's
Hmm.
why it causes the effects that it causes. But just
Hmm.
think about, for me, that was my why. Why would I want to stop drinking? I enjoy it. Social. It's not a problem for me. It's all my buddies drink. It's a great time. I have great memories from when I used to drink a lot. My why became, if I stop, I can become so much more optimized. I can be
Yes.
heads and tails above not just other people, but above the version of myself so much faster.
Yeah.
So you start thinking about things, not just alcohol, but sugar, overly caffeinating yourself,
Hmm.
all these other things in your life, and you start understanding why you should potentially consider dropping those things, it makes it a lot easier to do so.
Exactly. I think that's key. And I really want people to reflect on that, that even though we're talking about subtracting things, we're also combining it with Dr. Bajaj's first recommendation of being really clear on your why, because you want to think
Right.
about the benefit you get. Yes, you're subtracting something, but you don't have to have a mindset of, oh, I'm deprived, I don't get to have it. You focus on the benefits you get. When I don't have the drink, even if everybody else is drinking, I'm thinking about, well, tomorrow I'm going to feel amazing. Tomorrow I'm going to have lots of energy for my podcast interview. And tomorrow
That's
I'm going to
right.
do this new marketing strategy. And I don't think so much about how I'm subtracting something, but all the benefits I'm going to get by just making that choice in that moment to forgo whatever it is, whatever it might be. And that also goes for the cake, the dessert, whatever it is. It's like, oh, I'm going to have that sugar hangover, whatever.
Right.
That we know how things affect us. So you brought up coffee, and I do want to talk about that for a minute, because it is another
Yeah,
one of those socially acceptable drugs. And
sure.
I have seen your videos. That's where I'm like, oh, I need to look at this one too, because I do have my cup of coffee in the morning. I have taken your advice and I cut it off at a certain point. But it really
Nice.
seems like one of those drugs that there's a range where it can be beneficial, but then it can also be very detrimental if we don't watch that carefully. Tell us about that.
No question. And listen, I love coffee and I drink coffee pretty much every day. So this is not about not drinking coffee or caffeine. But like you said, I mean, it's in moderation. And it's very easy as we get bored sometimes in the middle of the day. And a lot of it is just boredom. I'm just going to grab a cup of coffee by the water cooler. I'm just going to walk around, take a break from the office, whatever the case may be. Or go to Starbucks and get that coffee, which ends up being like a sugary frappuccino, which isn't a coffee at all. But the challenge with overly caffeinating yourself in general, multiple things to worry about there. You can significantly adversely affect your sleep. So you really shouldn't have caffeine after about 2 p.m. to do your best to maintain some sort of a normal circadian rhythm. Overly caffeinating yourself, number two, can throw off your cortisol, which is your stress hormone. So if you throw off your cortisol, you can now increase, meaning you increase it. Now you're looking at all sorts of sleep disturbances, endocrine disturbances, hormonal imbalances. Everything can get thrown off kilter. And number three, caffeine can directly cause changes in estrogen and testosterone, which can be very significant, especially for males, because you really kind of mess with that ratio, increasing the estrogen in comparison to the testosterone, and that can significantly adversely affect who we are as males.
Absolutely. And I've noticed, well, since you're mentioning the hormonal aspect, I've noticed that coffee, alcohol, so many things affect me more in menopause. And I know that's
Interesting.
related to the hormonal changes. So I think we have
That's
to
right.
really be paying attention and not assuming that how things affected us a decade ago will stay the same as we move through different phases of our body's changes.
Correct. Correct. Before I forget, Bridget, one thing also that's important to address about these habits. If you have your why, like for example, I'll just stay on the alcohol. Yeah, let's just say your why is everything we've talked about. You can be a functioning superior the next day, blah, blah, blah. But let's not forget, if you are the person who's able to have that Perrier or that sparkling water in the company of your friends at happy hour, not only are you getting all the physical benefits, but you've now taught yourself, I am
Mhm.
strong enough to be able to
Mhm.
resist the peer pressure and do what I told myself I was going to do. That is
Yes.
exactly how you build self-confidence. It's not about reading any
Yes.
sort of self-help book or anything like that. You have to take the right action that you promise yourself you're going to take. And if you're
Yes.
strong enough to do that and you build upon it, oh my gosh, you're going to be unstoppable.
Yes, that is so true. And that also especially applies to exercise. You're getting the benefit of the exercise, but you're also building the confidence that I am taking care of myself. I keep my word to myself, even if I feel sleepy. It's not about being motivated, just you do it, whether you're motivated or not, whether you feel like you want to exercise or not, you commit to
Right.
yourself. These are the days I'm exercising. These are the kinds of exercise I'll be doing. And it feels great after.
Totally. And to your point, great point about the feelings. It's not about how you feel. And I think for whatever reason, there's a lot of emphasis on feelings these days in general,
Mhm.
and it is what it is. But at the end of the day, my feelings don't matter to anybody but me. If I'm having a
Mhm.
bad day, whatever that means, nobody cares. Nobody cares. You know who cares? My competitors care. Oh,
Mhm.
look,
Yeah.
Akash is he's grouchy today. How can I benefit from that? Who else
Mhm.
cares? People close to you in your relationships. My wife may be like, oh, he's grouchy today. I don't want to be around him. My kids are going to be like,
Mm-hmm.
Dad's pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody cares but you. And if I'm having a bad day or I'm having bad feelings and I allow myself to overly care about those feelings, I'm going to completely miss my routine. And so what is that going to do? Shatter my self-confidence. I'm going to miss a day of working out. I might have a couple of drinks and boom, everything just goes in the opposite direction. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the way that I say, and this may be a little bit aggressive, mitigate the effect your feelings have on your promised actions to yourself. If I'm tired, like you just said, great example. If I'm tired, which is like last night, my kids were up at 3 a.m. and I've been up with them from 3 a.m. all the way till all day, basically, and I'm exhausted, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you have to push forward with what you told yourself you're going to do. One's feelings are like waves in an ocean. They're going to come and they're going to go.
Mm-hmm.
But the sooner we understand that, the more you can understand, listen, you got to just keep pushing forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's hard to realize in that moment when we're struggling is that we're probably going to feel better. It's going to help us feel better.
That's right.
We're not
That's
going to
right.
feel as good as we might if we had gotten a full night of sleep. Of course, that's the reality. But it's not going to help to skip your routine and to
That's
have
right.
those drinks and to just comfort food and to sink into that rather than
That's
just
right.
sticking to what you've committed to. So
That's
so
right.
I agree with you. I try to practice this. Now I really have a big question. Do you have a few more minutes?
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, this is
Because
great.
thank you. I love this idea of subtracting. And I
Yeah.
know there are also things you can recommend to us to add. And I do want to preface it by saying there's so much information out there. You have a lot of videos on different supplements and different things we should be eating and doing. And so if you can kind of narrow down for us, what are your top tips on what we should be adding in to our diet, to our life? What supplement? What are your top
Yeah.
recommendations?
It's a great question. I mean, I think ultimately we want to take or we want to add supplements that are going to improve the kind of the core processes of our bodies or of our functionality, right? So number one for that, well, number one and number two, sleep and inflammation, respectively. If we can add supplements to improve our sleep, that's just going to optimize your entire life. What are some of the top supplements that I would recommend for sleep? Magnesium. Pretty much everybody across the board is deficient in magnesium. If you can supplement with magnesium, glycinate specifically is the most easily absorbable. Pretty much at night, not only does magnesium itself have kind of a calming, sedative effect to it, so it'll help you sleep better, but it just replenishes low magnesium stores. What does that mean? Less muscle cramps, less muscle aches. You can actually think more clearly as well, believe it or not. So magnesium would be number one. In respect to sleep, number two for sleep and slash kind of calming, sedating effects would be like L-theanine. L-theanine is a great supplement that kind of mimics a lot of what magnesium does, but in a different mechanism of action, and also very additive. So I'd say those two are really big for sleep. There's also some other ones that can be tweaked into it, but very patient specific. Everybody would probably mention melatonin, but not a great one for certain people. Like for me, melatonin actually stimulates me, and for maybe 25% of the population, that's the case. So very case by case with that. But I would say magnesium and L-theanine for sure. Now, number two, inflammation. What can we do to mitigate inflammation? But number one on that would be, frankly, diet. Diet. I mean, just minimizing unhealthy pro-inflammatory foods like alcohol, like sugar. Those are the two big ones. If you can minimize those, you're going to minimize your overall inflammatory state. This is why you see a lot of inflammation and very high inflammatory markers in diabetics, because diabetics obviously have uncontrolled blood sugar regulation and glucose regulation. So their inflammation is through the roof. What's the big deal about that? Now this leads to chronic back pain, chronic neck pain, poor wound healing, just overall just a bad state. May even potentially exacerbate or potentially contribute to cancerous states. There's some research on that as well. So I'd say supplement wise, I'd probably say those two for sleep. Inflammatory wise, I'd say things like just completely modifying your diet and minimizing the pro-inflammatory agents. Other supplements that I personally take on a daily basis, I would recommend like a daily green. something like an athletic greens or some sort of daily green shake I take in the morning was something similar to that. Because you just get a massive influx of a lot of potential vitamins and minerals that you're probably not going to get in a busy day. Plus, it builds a habit. For me, when I wake up, just like I brush my teeth, before I'm even truly awake, I'm already mixing my shake, getting my day started, getting my mind waking up, and I'm ready to go. And I've also proven to myself that I can do what I've told myself I'm going to do. So I'd say those are some of the bigger ones.
Excellent. Well, I'm very happy to hear that because I do all of those.
Awesome.
So
That's
I'm
awesome.
really, I'm really happy that you are reinforcing my choices and my routines. Yeah,
Nice.
I take magnesium every night before bed. I
Awesome.
L-theanine is really interesting to me because I just discovered that recently,
Oh,
and it
nice.
works for me more. Well, I've taken it at night too, and I think it helps. I've taken it during the day if I'm feeling anxious because it's really good
Yep.
for just calming. And I've
Totally.
noticed, yes, it's a really cool, I don't, yeah, I didn't, I'm surprised I hadn't heard about it sooner, but I found it recently. And melatonin, same for me. Melatonin does not help me sleep. It does not work well
Right.
for me, which is so
Right.
strange. But I know for some people swear by it. You have to test things out. Diet, absolutely. I've taken out all the inflammatory foods as much as I can. The athletic greens, I've slipped on that. So I'm definitely going to go make sure to go back to my athletic greens. So everybody, this stuff really works. I feel like we've covered some of the really top tips that you have for us, but what else should we know? What have we left out that I didn't ask about?
One thing that just kind of popped in my mind that I would add in respect to the whole subtraction thing,
Hmm.
kind of taking it to a different side of it is decision fatigue. So decision fatigue basically is
Mm.
kind of a theory that, hey, we can only really make good decisions so many times through the course of a day. One thing that I personally do, and a lot of people have done this isn't my idea, is minimizing the decisions you need to make in a given day. And that can
Mhm.
include things like your wardrobe, for example. Steve Jobs is
Mm.
super popular and famous for this. He always wore the same thing because he doesn't have to think about what he's going to wear. When I
Mhm.
read about that several years ago, I actually did the exact same thing. So every t-shirt that I have now matches every pair of jeans that I have, and I could put on any pair of shoes. When I go to work in my clinical practice, I'm always just wearing the same scrubs. So I'm not thinking about that stuff, and I eliminate that whole process of if this matches with that or whatever. Sounds
Mhm.
trivial. Trust me, it's not trivial. Not only do you not think about it, you kind of save that bandwidth in your brain, but you save time because you just
Yes.
grab one of those, put it on and go. So I would consider that too when we're talking about the subtraction component.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes so much sense to me. And I think, yeah, when I have a decision to make and I'm mulling it over, it's just so exhausting. So I think
Totally,
it makes
right?
so much sense. Yes. I wanted to ask you about something you said earlier because I wanted to clarify when we were talking about
Sure.
sticking to your routine, even if you're tired, not that it doesn't matter how you feel, it matters how you feel. Of course, you want to feel good. We want to strive to feel good and to want
Of
to do
course.
as much as we can. But I also want to address because I think it's important to know when too much is too much and when you've taken on too much. And that I think the things that we're talking about also need to be aligned with making sure that you have balance in your life and that you do have recovery time and that you do have rest time and that we recognize that that's important too. Because I think I know I was over indexing a little, I think earlier in the conversation,
Mhm.
I'm like, just push through, just do what you committed to, because that's kind of how I try to talk to myself. But I
Sure.
also know sometimes it's too much and I have to cancel plans or give up one of the million things I've committed to do or sometimes even just take a nap because I
Yeah.
have the afternoon open and it's a Sunday and I've pushed myself like crazy all week. So I just want to balance what we said earlier with that. Can you
Yeah.
speak to that a little bit?
I absolutely agree with that. And I think that's actually part of it. For people like for type A personalities, it's actually very difficult to take a nap, like you said, or just
Mhm.
have a rest day. I mean, for
Mhm.
example, today is my rest day from working out, and I am just itching to go work out, but I'm not going to do it. It's the same thing. I've told myself I'm going to rest today. So I'm going to rest today. It goes both ways. I mean, telling yourself you're going to do
Yeah.
something doesn't necessarily mean it has to be an aggressive action of some sort. It can also be incorporating self care, which is
Mhm.
super important. I force myself personally to get a deep tissue sports massage twice a month.
Mhm.
It's self
Mhm.
care. These things keep you
Mhm.
optimized. Taking a nap in the afternoon or what have you. clinically proven to help you. Rest days, clinically proven to help you. So I totally agree with you. I think building it into your kind of weekly, monthly program is paramount. So you don't spontaneously just kind of whatever go with the wind. But if you build it in, then you're optimizing yourself in an amazing way, which includes rest and downtime, no question.
Excellent. Okay. So we're like in 100% agreement. I just knew this would
Nice,
happen
nice, nice, nice.
because I love your videos. So I was like,
Awesome. Thank
he's
you.
just gonna, yeah, this is gonna be awesome. So just to sum up, so we've got to
Yeah,
be clear on our why. We've got to know why it matters. And it's not about vanity. It's about quality of life and longevity. We need to build healthy habits and we need to stick to those consistently. And we need to mindfully choose what we need to subtract with a focus on the benefits we get from subtracting. Not it's not deprivation, it's we gain so much. Our lives are so enriched by subtracting these harmful and unnecessary substances and habits and negative habits. And then what do we add in? Things that help us sleep, things that are anti-inflammatory, foods that will give us energy and help us feel healthy and alive and feel good and feel positive about our
right,
lives. So that's a kind
right.
of summary. Would you add anything to that?
No, I think it was perfectly said. The one thing I would say is this sounds maybe difficult, like, oh my gosh, I got to do all these things. But the reality is, and you can probably speak to this too, Bridget, is like when you start to do these things, when you start to, let's say, consistently work out on a regular basis, you will almost want to eat better because
Yes.
you don't want to lose all the gains you've created. If you have an amazing week of working out and you go destroy like 3 In-N-Out hamburgers and wash it down with a Coke, you're gonna feel kind of bad about yourself because you've just lost all those gains.
Yeah.
So it sounds maybe difficult, like I got to do all these things, but the reality is it's very fluid. It all flows in with each other. Everything just flows together once you get the momentum going, and it honestly becomes super easy.
Yeah. I could not agree more. And on that note, I want to say to the audience that I don't want any of this to come across as judgmental or like you're doing it
No,
wrong
no,
because
not at all.
as you said in the beginning, Akash, you've struggled with all of this. I've struggled as well. I've been overweight. I've had unhealthy habits on and off through my life. And finally, in my 40s and 50s, I feel like I've really gotten a handle of things because I see those benefits. So I don't want anybody to feel like we're judging, we're waving our fingers like stop doing these things and do all the right
Yeah,
things. It's with great empathy and understanding that in the world we live in, it can be challenging. And as you said, in the social environments we're in, people are not modeling this. I've had talks with people about people are like, why aren't you eating the cake? That's so rude. It's the wedding cake. It's the birthday cake. It's like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So we know, I know these things are hard and I know that there's not always a lot of support and you're kind of on your own, but
yeah.
we offer you these opportunities to take what works for you and leave the rest. Consider the possibility that some of this might help you live longer and feel better.
Totally. And to your point, Bridget, this is all intended to be delivered with grace. And what I mean by that is, I used to be an overweight, depressed kid. I remember how that felt. I
Mhm,
remember trying to overcompensate by buying a lot of designer brands and distracting
mhm,
people from the real issue. So I just speak from my personal experience. Now I can buy a $10 t-shirt and I look amazing in it. And that is a
mhm.
feeling that you just can't replace. And
Yeah,
so I just speak like that because I want people to understand there is a better way. You can
yeah.
feel better and
Mhm,
you can be healthier
mhm.
without having to go through life in a maybe suboptimal way. There is a way
Mhm,
through.
mhm,
I know
mhm,
because I've been there.
mhm. Exactly. And I could share a lot on that same note. I was also very unhealthy as a kid, ate unhealthy,
Yeah.
was overweight, smoked cigarettes for a few years in my teen
Yeah.
years, things that people who know me now probably would be shocked to hear. Right? So this has been a
Yeah.
lifelong journey and I'm in better health and better shape and more fit and healthy and energetic at almost 55 than I ever have been. So I'm
Love
not
it.
suggesting but I'm not, yeah, thank you. But I'm not suggesting that it's always been easy and I've always been here. It's just that as I
Totally.
get older and I've lost a lot of people in my life, and you can see how the choices directly relate to longevity and health. And I have my parents are 75 and 76, and they're amazing. They do a long hike every single day. They're incredibly fit, incredibly healthy, no health issues. And they're my role models, so I see what's possible. And like, I could just see them living well past 100, easily.
Bravo. I love that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, I so appreciate your time. I know you
Totally.
are
No,
a
this was
very
nice.
busy dad and doctor. Thank you. It was so nice to chat
That
with you.
was
I'm
good.
glad.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks
Oh,
so much
good.
for having me. Yeah. It was
Oh,
awesome.